Greetings, Marsh here, and welcome to episode 28 of my Industrial Revolution 3 playthrough. In this episode, we are going to produce gold and then start making red circuits. Enjoy! Okay, we need to set up a new train station for our gold, but one other thing I'd like to do before we start on that is just move the ethanol into the oil processing numbers here. It is going to require a rather long line of power poles, unfortunately. I'm always hesitant to run giant lines like this, and I guess we don't need this here either. This does help a little bit in cleaning up the factory, as long as we don't break anything. And there we go. Our ethanol is now in there, and we can make the list a little shorter. One thing that is happening is we are starting to build up the bitumen here, which means if this overfills and we don't actually need it for any of the silicon carbide bricks, then we'll have to burn it, which is actually possible. That once you make graphitic coke, although it doesn't add any fuel and it makes the pollution worse, you can burn it. So if you burn the graphitic coke, if you are overloaded on bitumen, you can make it disappear, which is valuable. You just don't get anything extra for doing so. But everything otherwise seems to be running pretty good here. All right then, we need to make some gold. And it's hard to say how much gold we're going to want to make here. We start out with the recipe to crush it. Ultimately, it's needed in quite small quantities where you get 2 gold foil from 1 ingot, and then these components only need 1 gold foil for 2 of the triodes. So we're looking at 2.5 gold bars for a circuit, so it's not a lot. So do we want to build for the future or build for now? I'm thinking build for now, and how about we do 15 a second? And I did just update Hellmod a little bit. Let's see if it helps or if it's still broken. Where our goal is to make gold ingots. And let's set the furnace to the gas furnace, which is the highest tier of furnace that can make the gold. And of course, it can only burn the natural gas. The input is the gold, which comes through a crusher. Of course, we do want efficiencies for that. And then the regular gold ore, it does not come from an electric derrick. It comes from a mining drill. And of course, the efficiencies. And so far that worked. So we should be able to type in a number here and have everything change. Oh, thank goodness. For once it actually works. Well, that gives you an idea on numbers. We probably still want to plan for having 15 gold ore a second, just in case we want to expand production a little bit, and we might want to consider doing some direct insertion. It's not an exact ratio, but it's pretty close that it makes it probably worth it to do that. I don't think we've actually done that in any of our setups yet. It doesn't look like it. So that'll be fun to do something a little different, at least with ore. We have been doing direct insertion with crushing from the stone products. But first, we need to make a new train station and train line, and this is going to be a long one. There's really no need to combine it on the same rail if it's not required. It certainly would save us rail, but it's not even going in the general direction that we would need it to. Another thing to consider is where would the ore be delivered and where would it be processed? Well, looking at the circuits we're going to need to make, it's going to need to have plastic bars, some tinned wire, and the triodes are going to need the gold and the silicon and tinned wire. So 3 of these things could potentially be in very close proximity to each other. The plastic, the silicon, and potentially the gold could all be in this general area because plastic is there, silicon is there. So if we processed gold and delivered it somewhere around here, then perhaps we could make the circuits in this area. So the train is probably going to deliver perhaps somewhere over here and just have a belt kind of going this way. I don't know if I want the train to come this far in because we probably want to reserve that space for something, but having it come in this general area and stopping is good. Plus, there is an opening between all of those cliffs. Although we can destroy the cliffs now, it is still kind of expensive to do so. So we probably want to avoid that, but it can come out here and like up, and that would also pass by the polluted steam and the crude oil if we wanted it. So that seems pretty good. We'll place it somewhere down there. We really don't need any of this here getting in our way. This will be gold. Unload. It looks like it'd be pretty good if we turned up like right here. That's a lot of water to go over, but we wouldn't impact anything. And then we can turn in there. Definitely gonna need more landfill than that. Well, I guess we'll just keep going then, because we're gonna run out of something else before too long. And just keep getting blocked by water. We definitely don't want this cliff here. or any of this. So for now, we'll just do a basic 6 miners. Now that we don't have to worry about biters, we can expand this whenever we need to. Luckily, we have power very nearby. Well, at least we can get this started. So that'll get loaded. Since this gets kind of weird when you don't have any tracks, let's go back, get more, and then fill that out. Ultimately, though, it would just keep going, which gets us connected in there. And thankfully, since that power has reached, it means we don't have to run a giant power line all the way up here. And it also so happens to be in the range of our radars. The rest of the tracks are not, but what can you do? I don't think I want to run radars all the way around just so we can visually see the tracks. They will get covered eventually as a result of our factory expanding. Enough of the track is complete. We can take the train now. It's got a long way to go. And stop. The most effective train brakes are the end of the tracks. And we can let this swing back in since it's the only thing on this network. I guess we could max out this mine. Wouldn't be too much more work. We would need another 6 miners, and we could barely make it, and we have to use other hand-built parts to make it happen. Well, we're getting a full belt here. I mean, we could get even more by doing more splitting, but that's probably good enough. I don't think we're ever going to need this much gold anytime soon. Well, at least that gets rid of this one, and it's cool that it has the pickaxe right there to show that that's a mining recipe. That is a nice quality of life improvement, so there's a little bit of advancement done there. Otherwise, it's gold load, full cargo, gold unload, empty cargo. And it fills up very quickly. It's interesting, when the factory is dormant, our radars are by far the biggest energy consumer, even when we have 47 electric drills. That they're not as much. Oh. This one isn't flowing at all. It must be because the belt is the wrong direction. Or something's the wrong direction. That's weird. It sure looks like it's right. I think I placed that, yeah, the wrong way on the train. Well, now it's good. Okay. We're about half full right now, and that's good enough to test the route. So it's time to head on back. And the train changes to its gold color to signify that it has gold on board. And it looks like it doesn't quite reach top speed. The fueling occurred, and we have lots and lots of gold. I guess we'll leave this yellow for now, since that is our intent, even though the station can unload faster. So once it's done, it'll head off. Okay, we need to build this somewhere. Might as well put it kind of in the factory here. And this is going to be relatively small, so doing it perhaps in this area makes sense. Don't need these trees here anymore, of course. Don't ever need the trees there. But let's try some direct insertion just to make this nice and easy. Where on one side, there will be our 2 crushers, and then the furnaces, with the pipes pushing the right way. And that's not a terrible place to start them. Let's put a few more in there so we can see what the power poles can do. Looks like every 2 will work just fine. Fortunately, they don't quite reach here, so they do have to basically go up the whole way. So if we did that and had 1 more on the end, that should be a nice repeatable pattern. That looks appealing because it's alternating back and forth. And of course some lights as well, but we can place them at nice intervals, and everything looks great. So at the halfway point, which appears to be right here, we can do an inside switch just to help the belts. They can combine like that and then go to where they need to go. Luckily, the natural gas is not too far away, so we'll just keep it going. It might make more sense to do it like this, but I don't think it's actually going to reach. Yeah, so there's kind of no point in putting it down there. Just up there instead, and everything is lined up. So do we get rid of that water and use a lot of landfill just so we can have mostly straight belts? Probably. It's going to take a lot of landfill. But that's why we have a lot of it. I'm kind of just going to grab all of it because we might need it. Oh, that's depressing. It's like 3 tiles short. We finally have our gold. And in it goes. And there we go. Lots and lots of gold bars that we don't currently need. Let's stand away from that for a little bit. Let's see what it goes into. Well, basically gold foil. And the gold plating solution, which does go into some stuff later. But right now, it's really only gold foil. And the gold foil, it goes into a little bit of stuff that we'll get into. And we've already gone through about 10% of the gold mine. But there's a huge buffer it needs to fill up, so that's to be expected. Okay, well now we need to try to plan for gold circuits. And how many of these do we want to make? Well, I guess it kind of depends. What did we do before? Not very many. So 6.25, and it was probably limited by the output of glass, I'm guessing. Where it was a red belt and 15 went here and 15 went there. But let's see if Hellmod works. Now we are going to need advanced computers, but since these circuits go into other things besides the advanced computers, we probably just want to make as many circuits as we can get away with. Because looking at what they go into, it's a lot of things, specifically logistics robots, but they go into a great deal of things, so we want more than just what would go into an advanced computer. So we'll set that as our output for now. And some other potential limiting factors is how much plastic bars we could have to support this. And it would be a lot. More than 15, so that should be enough. And in fact, how about we just set this to 15 and see what happens, because that creates a problem, but we might be able to deal with that. Let's do the tinned wire now. That has to be an electric assembler, which makes sense, because it requires 2 items. However, the copper wire can just go in. So that kind of gives us an idea of what we can do here. Maybe having 2-to-1 ratio, so we don't have to have all this stuff on belts. It just kind of depends. But ultimately, the big thing are these triodes here, and that requires a lot of electric assemblers. So many, in fact, that it's probably direct insertion for that. And just these numbers are huge. So getting things in might be kind of difficult. So if we walk to this back to 12, then we're at 1 full belt of each. But could we do 30 gold foil? Well, yes, because that's 15 ingots. And could we do 30 silicon? Did we invest that much? No, not really. Basically only like 12 and a half. This is important whenever you're planning any new builds, is make sure you don't have any major weaknesses, and we really don't want to be pumping out any more silicon than that right now, especially considering we just built it. So 4 uses most of our silicon output without using too much, although if we used 5, that would be all of it. And then looking at the numbers, it means that direct insertion is no longer strictly required because the numbers are smaller, even though we still may want to do it. And we want another set of tinned wire because those are going to hopefully be direct inserted. Okay. Well, it's a little more complicated, but let's see what we can do here. And pretty much all those trees are probably going to be in the way, so I think we're going to need the heavy roller for this. It does feel good to finally start using that plastic, because all of that oil processing was essentially for that. And it took a little while to get to the point where we actually needed it, but here we are. It's nice having this pollution-absorbing forest here. It's been a while since we've checked pollution, and really it's quite good right now. We really don't have anything to worry about. So we can freely pull this out without feeling too bad about it. And let's turn off our owner report because we really don't need to be helping. Alright, let's try to make something that's repeatable. It looks like the main limiting factor, as far as size, is going to be these triodes, and we would want to build this in such a way where hopefully, if we had a higher supply of, say, the silicon, we can just copy this and get more. So we definitely want to try to make that happen if we can. And since these silicon triodes are the most limiting factor, they are basically the #1 thing that should be direct inserted. So at the very least, we'd want to have this. Then 2 of these, could be fed by one coil machine, and it would have two other inputs. One of them, I guess it could go here or here, but it might look better if it was just in the middle. Like this. That would be the silicon input. And in fact, we actually could really smash this in here. Like we could do this. It works. So this also would need the foil, and that is where the long-handed comes in, because we would have the foil makers right there. Let's try to get rid of some of the flashing. Let's just put these wherever they fit for now, and we'll make it perfect later. And then this one will also get its copper wire, and it's a 1-to-1 ratio there. So it'd probably look something like this, but now that doesn't quite fit, so this really needs to be here. But we could also do something that's kind of sideways like this. And then if we put this right there, it's been a while since we've done something like that, but that will allow the copper ingots to get pulled in. And then the gold ingots will also be on that belt, and they'll get pulled in. Then the only other thing would be the tin ingots, which could come along there. So that's tin, that's copper. Then the gold comes through, and of course it will get the tinned wire. The silicon will be on that belt, the foil, and then that will be everything for that side. So just as a check, could this be copied? Basically, yeah. And we can't really smash it in anymore because we need room for power poles. I mean, we might find a way, but do we really need to save that extra square every once in a while? Probably not. We don't want to find ourselves inserter limited in the future. We're not even really going to have that many of these. It's not going to be very dense in the beginning. It'll just be expandable for the future. So they're going in to make the circuits. However, we also kind of need to do the same thing on the other side, making more tin. But we would want to have a gap. And then we would have our output there. And we would also have a belt of plastic coming in, being picked up like that. And then pretty much the exact same thing right here. But it's a little easier because there's more space. So it'd be like this. Let's move that over there so it's more symmetrical and the power line reaches. And I believe that would be it if I've got everything in there. So you want to put this in such a place where it is expandable. But we also don't want to crowd gold in case we are going to expand that later. We don't want to crowd down here either. So I'm actually thinking we might want to kind of put it in this little slot right here. Perhaps like that. So we'll just slam it over. We want 5 copies worth. Although I don't recall if these can use productivity modules or not. I don't think they can. Yeah. Because otherwise we probably would have used them before. So by placing it up here, we will be able to basically copy the entire thing and extend it down at least 3 times, maybe 4 or 5, depending if anything else is here. So we'll really be able to crank this up if we need to. The tricky part will be getting the resources in here. We'll probably have to move the belts around for the resources, but that's a minor thing. So in all that goes, and I think we're getting pretty close to testing this. Well, let's put in this side then, to make the tinned copper wire for the circuits. And the ratio isn't exact. In fact, it's only a 1-to-4 ratio, so we basically have twice as many. And that's fine. I did this mainly for lack of belt logistics, rather than it being as few machines as possible. Many times you have to make those sacrifices when doing this kind of thing. But there's the gold. Let's do the other tin. So that gets pulled in, but it needs its copper. And of course, the gold foil machines will go as well. And they seem to be. So these have everything but the silicon. So in that goes. And it looks like we are missing one more inserter here. We needed to have one more gold foil machine on the end. There we go. So we have everything but the plastic bars, which are right here. And achievement unlocked. There it is. Finally using oil for its intended purpose, making circuits. Yeah, seems pretty good. The main limiting factor here is that silicon, and we just built it, so I kind of don't want to superpower it. Plus, it's not really in a place that we could upgrade it easily. It's already kind of the maximum size it can be, so it kind of makes sense to leave it there. We'll try to upgrade it later if it becomes relevant, because we have certainly survived on this circuit making setup up until now. And it's basically the same size, so it is well matched. And we need less advanced circuits than basic circuits for making the computers, so that all kind of lines up. So the next step is to actually use those circuits, but at this point I don't think we need them for anything. So let's do some research and make some things that we need the circuits for. And it's kind of hard to choose because there's lots of good stuff here. This is a big moment in the factory. Well, one thing we can do is research solar panels. If you are a normal Factorio player, this is probably one of the first things you'd want to do because then it makes making power much easier. But this is going to be a no solar panel playthrough for me, just so I can show off all of the different power generation types of IR3, because the problem with solar panels is that all you have to do is build enough of them and you're fine. And when you look at the amount of space we now have, we'd be able to build enough solar panels to supply us until the end of the game. It's just a scale thing, and once you have robots and you could defeat biters and expand your wall, it becomes kind of a non-issue. So I'm choosing not to use these solar panels for power just so we can keep processing petrochem and getting more power out of that, and of course nuclear power when that comes. But nonetheless, if you wanted to make the solar panels, it's one of those circuits with glass, silicon, and steel, so it's relatively expensive. But nonetheless, you would definitely want those. And we'll hit the research now, because that does allow us to research the portable solar panels, which is a 1x1 item for our equipment grid. And it does require a solar panel as an input. And I'm actually fine with using these, because unlike regular solar panels, which are unlimited, all you have to do is build enough of them, we are limited based on the number of portable solar panels we put in our equipment. So that is limited, and thus I have no problem using them. So we'll get that research going. And we do have module 2s we can do, but I kind of want to wait on those until we have robots, because the robots would make upgrading our factory so much easier than us doing it ourselves. And really, it wouldn't be a huge difference. It would just be going from negative 60% energy consumption to negative 80 under most circumstances, and there would be productivity bonuses, which would be nice. And that would use advanced computers. So we'll cover those when they're ready, but that does give us a target that we can build towards. And that's the advanced computers. And the advanced computers require a small steel frame, and that just requires steel items. And then if we wanted to do the large steel frame, we would need one of those advanced computers. The process is extremely similar to what we've already done. So if possible, we kind of want to repeat it, where we go small frame into the computers, and then into the big frames, which then can get used. We did kind of put this in a weird order, where we should have done the rotor units on this side, because they do use the small frames. So if we are not making those yet, which we don't seem to be, we may want to. And they go into robots. So I'm thinking that answer is yes, we do want to make them. We'll just copy it. It looks like I didn't smush these as tightly as they could have been. That's slightly triggering. Well, that one definitely needed the gap for those, and then that means this one couldn't be squished. This one could have been, though, but oh well. We'll just have to remember that. Squish the machines. So there we go. And that needs to be steel. It continues. It goes in, and now we need the small steel frames, which are just a copy of the iron ones. So it would go right there. And we do need the gaps in there because these are direct inserting into each other. So more steel. Of course, this one has to be the correct one as well. There we go. And that's going. Not sure what to put on this other belt. Oh, I'm dumb. We already did that. So that was entirely unnecessary. So all of that is going. Now we need circuits. The green type, which are right here. And one inserter will be fine. And then also the red ones. Okay, that's a lot of work to switch it around to the other side, but I think we can kind of do the same thing if we just move it one square. So it looks a little cleaner. Looks like it's slowing down a little bit though. The main limiting factor are the triode machines, of which there are 10 of them. So if it's running correctly, every triode machine should be running at full blast and everything else should be running slightly slower. So we would expect this to go at full blast. It very much seems to. This one is not, though. No gold foil. Looks like these inserters are missing on all of these. So one right there, one right there, one right there. And 8 out of 10 of the circuit machines should be running at any given time. But all of the triodes should be going. And they seem to be. It's nice that working on these circuits requires tin, so it gives tin another use besides just being dumped into bronze. And that's just another cool part about IR3, about how every resource more or less remains relevant even in the late game. Still making those ammo magazines, that's probably going to go on for a very long time. Looks like tin is actually being maxed out now. Guess that makes sense, it hasn't been upgraded in a very long time. But we're not that far away from upgrading our whole ore processing chain, so it might be worth just letting it run low. Awesome, the solar panels are done. And circuits are here. And there it goes. It's still in the machine, but it counts as an achievement. Well, the other thing we needed to do was make the large steel frame now, which would go on the other side of this machine. And we could build that, based on what we did, for the iron frames. Because the recipe is the same, just the ingredients change. So on the end it goes. Guess we'll just keep this belt going. I'm sure we'll need it again eventually. Whoops. But, don't do that. Too late. We need to change all those recipes. Make the large steel frames, please. Yep, definitely gotta pick the items out of these inserters to clear them up. But there we go. Most of it's in there. It does need the steel beams, but they can continue along here. And also, the computers get inserted in there. Our minibus is not so mini anymore, but it's surviving, barely. And they're in there. These we'll just pick up manually, because we just don't need that many of them at any given time. We want small frames, and the big frames, and the rotors. And the big frames, and of course steel is gone. So we are using all of it right now. And it kind of makes sense that we're getting to the point to where we're going to need some serious upgrades to our factory. So we've done most of the steel items, still a few more left over, like the junction box and the gyroscope, but since we don't actually need those right now, we can probably skip them. So what we unlocked was the solar panel and the portable solar panel. And because we're not going to be automating solar panels, because we're just not going to be placing any of them, because I'm not going to use them, I kind of feel like I should just do some handcrafting. And right now, our armor has 4 extra spaces for solar panels, so we might as well put them in there. Which means we need to handcraft 4 of these. And we do want to have some of these circuits in our inventory. So we'll do that. I guess we can move these over, because the circuits are the kind of rare thing that we want a bunch of. So asking for circuits. We do need the computers, and we'll need those for modules. And how we build modules is essentially the same way. It's basically this. And in fact, we won't even need to make these tier 1 modules anymore. So we can essentially cut that whole thing out. And we could try to reprocess all of the old modules. But kind of the problem there is when you look at the basic computers, what do they go in? Besides other modules in any meaningful amount? Basically the large iron frames. And those go into Iron Age buildings. They do go into quite a few, but eventually we're going to find ourselves with way too many of these. And done with modules. And that's the end of this episode. On the next one, we are going to do some more research and start making the items that were locked behind red circuits. Thanks for watching. I'll see you later.